Welcome, everybody, to the Xavier Basketball Weekly Show on the Gruely True Sports Network. I am your host for the Xavier Basketball Weekly Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Andy MacWilliams. How you doing, Andy Mac?
Doing well. A good, solid, do what you have to do win for the Muskies last night. And, Depaul's not the great juggernaut everybody thought when they were 12-1 in the non-conference, but they're still pretty good. They've got the talented starting five, and Xavier was under some pressure. It was sort of a must-win, and they did it in style last night at Cintas. I think it was 78-67 Xavier.
Yes, and I thought Najee Marshall was terrific. And we're not even talking about the offensive end. I thought he did a great job on Charlie Moore, who's one of the quickest guards in any league.
That's probably Najee's number one ticket to the NBA, his one-on-one defensive skills. I mean, he's done it this year to Miles Powell of Seton Hall. He did a number on Marcus Howard of Marquette in that double overtime game, although Marcus got hurt. I mean, I guess part of it was they knocked him out of the ball game. That helped. He also did a great job on who else did he do a good job? Another good point guard. I forget who it was. Quincy McKnight of Seton Hall. He's guarded at times. And Gillespie in the game that the Xavier lost to Villanova. I mean, Gillespie'd been on a tear, the point guard for Nova. And Najee sort of locked them up. And, unfortunately, Xavier didn't have a clone of Najee to guard Sadiq Bey. I mean, that's the problem with Villanova. They got if you lock up Gillespie, Sadiq Bey or Samuels or one of those other guys will take care of you. But, Najee's a great one-on-one defender. It started to emerge midway through last season, his sophomore year, and he's gotten better and better. You can really Charlie Moore is a bit of a feast or famine guy anyway. I mean, he'll have a great game and then he'll have a horrible game. And last night he really wasn't much of a factor. Dave Lato had him on the bench a lot in the first half, and he really doesn't have any alternatives at point guard, but I think he got a little frustrated with Charlie and his penchant for turnovers, and he tends to take some bad shots and gets all excited. But Najee, I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, and Xavier on the boards, not a great job. They got out-rebounded 40-25, but they hit 12 out of 25 three-pointers. Jason Carter was huge on that. He was 3 for 3. Paul Scruggs was 3 for 5. Kiki Tandy came off the bench, hit a couple also. So really, this is a team that won a little bit differently than normal. They won it by really shooting the ball well last night.
Yeah, 12 of 25 that's 48% from three, and effective shooting. You add another 24% to that because the field goals were 3 points. That's 48. That's 72% effective field. That'll win you a lot of ball games. But you got to consider, take it with a grain of salt. Depaul gave up 18 3-point makes to Villanova about 2 games ago. So I mean, Depaul is defensively, they're not as bad as in the Oliver Purnell days, but they are certainly defenses like maybe just an inconvenient truth until they get the ball back. Their big guys are good though. I mean, Reed is going to play in the NBA, and Jalen. They never give Jalen Butts the ball on the block. He is a horse down low, and they give him. He might get 2 or 3 touches a game. Yeah, he's a great player, and the guy that really hurt Xavier last night is Romeo Weems, the freshman. He's 6'7", maybe 215, great leaper, and again, they don't feature him enough. He has a 3-point stroke too. He was Mr. Basketball in the state of Michigan last year, and I don't know how. I don't want to know how Lato got him to come to play at DePaul. I'm sure it's all above board. It was all honest or whatever. But he won the Brad Redford Award as Michigan Mr. Basketball. My understudy. I'm his mentor. He says Redford was Michigan Mr. Basketball in 2007, I think it was.
Yeah, and I think this, I don't know what your take on this is, but I think when you get into conference play, pre-conference play, You don't know your opponents as well. I think when you get into conference play, a lot of this has to do with coaching. And when you look at this conference, there's a lot of really good coaches here. And not saying DePaul's coach isn't the guy, but just watching them play defense would make me think that may be a little bit of the issue.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, Leto has had a good run, 15 years ago when he was first at DePaul. Then he went to Virginia and had moderate success there. Then he got fired. And the same AD was at DePaul, so they thought you can't go home again, but they brought him back. And he's been there 5 years. He's made progress. It's a tough job because the DePaul brand is certainly shriveled since the days of Terry Cummings and Mark Aguirre and all those guys. That was like going on 35 years ago.
Don't say that, Andy. It was actually almost 40 years ago, and I remember it really well. That's what scares me.
Yeah, well, those were great teams, man. But what was I going to say? Romeo Weems, a great recruit for DePaul. Apparently, Leto's got 2 or 3 pretty good ones in the hopper, and he's been able to get some of these Chicagoland high school stars who've gone, out of state to come back home. Charlie Moore is an example. He started off at California under what's the guy's name who came from the Purdue guy? He's now at Missouri. I can't think of his name.
I know I can't either. If you ask me, 1980, Lee Rose coached him.
Quanzo Martin. He was a
Quanzo Martin
recruit.
Okay.
To the Cal Bears, and he was all freshman team in the Pac-12, and then Quanzo took the job at Missouri and left, and our boy Charlie transferred to Kansas. He played off the bench for a year. Then he got a waiver and became immediately eligible at DePaul because he'd already redshirted 1 year at Kansas. But he played for Kansas last year. Not a lot, but I mean he's a very good player. But he's a high school. He was like a player of the year in the Chicagoland area like 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, the guy's a jet, but not exactly what you call a pass first point guard.
Well, and the key to being successful in DePaul is being able to get Chicago guys. That's Terry Cummings. The majority of guys, Mark Aguirre, that were there with Ray Meyer from probably 78 through 82, 83, when they had one of the best programs in the country, that's what he did. He got basically all the Chicago guys to come play there.
Yeah, and then, after Ray Meyer passed the torch to his son, Joey, Lou Henson took over at Illinois. And he had Tony Yates as his bag man. They went up to the Chicago Public League, Simeon and all those. They brought all those great Chicago high school,
Kendall Gill and all those guys.
They brought them down, down to Central Illinois, to Champaign-Urbana. I mean, there's Marcus Liberty, on and on. You can go right on. Steve Bardo, all those guys ended up going to Illinois instead of going to DePaul and staying at home, or going to Loyola. So that changed the map a little bit. But Leto has gotten a bunch of those guys to transfer back. The 2-guard Lands spent his first 2 years at Illinois, then transferred back, and they've got a number of others, a couple others waiting in the wings, I guess, also.
All right, so we got two road games coming up, which are both, I think, winnable. And when you look at the Big East standings, Xavier right now is tied for 6th with Butler. They're only a half a game behind Marquette at number 5. They get to play Providence, which gives them a chance maybe if Providence drops some to move up there. But when you look at Xavier at 18-10, what do you think? 2 out of 3 to finish the season gets them in the tournament?
Well, to be honest, looking at the numbers, and it's a bit of a risk, but if Xavier would get to 8 wins, 8-10 in the league, and maybe say the win is against Butler on Senior Day at Cintas on March 7th, that might well be enough. I think they're going to go. The NCAA is going to go 7 deep into the Big East because the conference is so highly rated and so very competitive. I'd feel a lot more comfortable at 9-9 with winning 2 out of the last 3. I think at 500, Xavier's a mortal lock for the NCAA. I mean, any team moved up to 42 today. They have no bad losses at all. No quad 3s, no quad 4s. I think they might have one quad 2. The resume from that standpoint is very, very good. They're a little short on the quad 1 wins, but look at Providence. I mean, they've played well in the league. They're 9-6, and if they get to 10 wins and they have 3 more shots at it, although they play at Villanova on Saturday, I doubt if they're going to win that game at the Pavilion.
No.
But they get to 10 wins, and they play Xavier, and then I think they end up with Depaul at the Dunk in Providence. So they're not losing that game. No. So they get to 10 wins. There's no way that in a league that strong, a 10-8 team is not going to get an NCAA pick.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's helped
I think the NCAA is going to.
Yeah, I think you've seen the Big Ten go from everybody saying they could get 12 in to getting 9 or 10. And I think you've seen the Big 12 maybe drop down to 4 or 5, which also frees up a little bit more space for a 7th team from the Big East.
I like to look at the most positive scenario possible. I think Xavier has a chance to win out here, to win the final 3 regular season games. First off, if Georgetown loses tonight at Marquette, and they're a big underdog, I mean, they're sort of running on fumes. Some of the national people still have them on the bubble for the NCAA, but they're 5-9 in the league.
Yeah, they're on the bubble still from national people because of the name Georgetown. Yeah,
because of Patrick Ewing and the Washington TV market and la-di-da. If they lose tonight, they're done. I mean, the bubble has burst. It's going to be ugly. And then what do they have to play for? I mean, I respect Louis Orr and Ewing getting them motivated, but Xavier's going to come in there with all sorts of incentives Sunday to play them in D.C. And, Georgetown, Mac McClung may play tonight, may not, because of the foot injury, and Yurt-Seven, the big Turkish 7-footer, has been in and out of the lineup with an ankle sprain. And we all know about the 4 guys that basically were kicked out of school back in December. So, they're ending up playing George Murasan's son, who is, I'm sure, a fine student, and a few other sons. Now, they have a nice starting 5 there, but those guys are they're worn out. The last 2 ball games that they lost, they just, they had no gas in the tank the last 5 or 6 minutes. Frankly, I think any hope that Georgetown, they're going to have to win 4 in a row, and their schedule is a total bear. They're at Marquette, they're at Creighton, they have Xavier at home, and they play Villanova. That's their final 4. Now, if they win those 4 games, they deserve to be.
Hell, if they win 3 out of 4, they probably deserve to be in.
It's not happening.
Yeah, they win 3 out of 4, they probably deserve to be in.
Well, that's not going to happen either.
I know it's not. So Georgetown's dead. Yeah. Now, when you look at the top of the Big East,
the big rub for Xavier is the game at Providence. I mean, not to say they could lose at Georgetown. What do I know? Butler, they could spread the healing waters over. The 2 guys are hurt right now. Baldwin and Aaron Thomas re-injured his left wrist at Creighton, and Baldwin's had a chronic ankle. So if those guys, Butler has lost 3 in a row, Marquette's lost 3 in a row. Butler is in deep trouble if those guys can't play. I mean, who does he have to play in the backcourt? He's got number 4, that Battle kid, who's going to be a good player, but he's a freshman, and Henry Badley. He has no guards. David is out for the year with an ACL. I mean, he's really short. He may have to. The coach may have to play himself. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I have no sympathy for him, but God bless him.
Yeah, and when you look at the top of the Big East, though, Creighton, Villanova, Seton Hall, I think are all 3 teams that have enough talent, and the way they're playing right now could make a deep run when we get to the NCAA tournament.
Well, right now, if you look at the bracket matrix, they are all a consensus 3 seeds. The 3 seeds are Seton Hall, Creighton, Villanova, and the Louisville Cardinals in the bracket matrix deal, where they basically average out 126 brackets across the country that they track. And if you look at Ken Palm, he projects the final standings of the Big East. He has it a 3-way tie at 13-5 between those 3 teams. And they play each other. There's some incestuous games coming up between those 3 back and forth. It's going to be a hell of a finish there. And like if Villanova plays St. John's tonight at the Pavilion in Philadelphia, they'll win that game like by 30. Now, if St. John's presses them, it could be interesting. Well, they are going to press them, but if they can force some turnovers, it might be interesting. But they'd move into a flat-footed tie for second with Creighton at 11-4, and Seton Hall has the lead right now at 12-3.
Yeah.
But yeah, if Xavier would win 4, they've got a chance to finish as high as a 4 seed.
Yeah,
and
which would be nice.
Say they tie with PC, because to win 4 they got to beat Providence. They have the tiebreaker on PC with 2 head-up wins. If they get a 4 seed and they run the table here, which probably won't happen, Xavier could get as good as a 6, maybe even a 5 in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Because all the games they've got, all 3 games they've got left are quad ones.
Well, and it'll also put you to semifinals. Right now, if everything stays the way it is, if they're number 4, would put you up against Seton Hall. And really, I think Seton Hall's a hell of a team. But right now, the way Creighton's playing and Villanova just with Jay Wright and the way they play defense, I'd almost rather play Seton Hall.
I mean, as long as Xavier avoids, and it's still a distinct possibility, even if they go 9-9 and win 2 of the final 3, that they might have to play on Wednesday night at Madison Square Garden in that opening round, which is that's a pointless game. It's not going to help you in the NET. Somebody could get hurt. You could get beat because they're going to end up playing DePaul or St. John's at MSG in a meaningless game for Xavier. DePaul and St. John's are looking to get over 500 so they can get into the NIT.
But you don't have to be over 500 to get in the NIT anymore, Andy.
I've heard 2 different theories on that. I'll tell you, if DePaul and St. John's do get into the NIT or Georgetown, those teams could easily they're good enough they could easily win that tournament.
Yeah, they could at least make a deep run into it. And I know the NIT would love to see, the Chicago market or the New York market or Patrick Ewing show up at Madison Square Garden.
Well, I guarantee you, if DePaul would get into the NIT, there would be 3 games at Wintrust Arena in Chicago because, the NIT is now owned by the NCAA. They all see dollars, and they see crowds of, average of 8,000 paid. That's 24,000 paid for 3 games at Wintrust. Same with Georgetown and D.C., although they're not drawing very well this year. And certainly the same deal with, could you imagine St. John's going back to Madison Square Garden for the NIT semis? I mean, that's a good draw. That's a good story. That's a lot of press.
Yeah, ton of press. And you need everything you can to get people interested in the NIT. So I know Indiana's first round game at the NIT last year drew 5,000 or 6,000 people. And usually you could just roll a basketball out, put 5 guys in an Indiana jersey, and 20,000 people from Indiana will show up to watch it. So that'll tell you how bad it is.
Yeah.
But, all right, when you look at the upcoming game, I think we both like Xavier's chances here. What do you think are the keys to the game?
Maybe a decent start. Keep your cool. The tempo has to be Xavier's way, basically half court, because Georgetown, even though they're short on numbers, they like to push it, and they're much better in chaotic scramble mode. And Xavier should be able to pound it inside. And if your 7 players get him in foul trouble, the big freshman who's going to be good, Wahab, he is very foul prone because he doesn't quite know what he's doing yet. And Xavier just has to keep their cool, control the tempo, and then at the other end, make Georgetown, they're a little fatigued, make them settle for early threes, which I imagine, fatigue makes cowards of us all. They'll launch, especially Blair and Jamarco Pickett, that group. Yeah. Now, if McClung plays, he'll try to make it into a wild run and gun circus, but I don't know. He's definitely got major foot problems.
Which, with a lack of depth, I would think a run and gun circus probably is not what they would want to do either.
That's what's happened to them the last two games. They just run out of gas in the second half.
Yeah, the Depaul game, they fell apart the last 5 minutes. So that'll tell you something right there. They got beat by Depaul. They got beat by 10 against Providence. They did beat Butler at Butler, which will tell you the issues that Butler's having right now. They played Seton Hall tough. So I think it's a game for 30 minutes that will be tough. And then I think Xavier will just pull away in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not taking anything away from Georgetown. They play hard. But that win at Butler, for example, Aaron Thompson did not play. That was he was out with that wrist injury. He's the point guard. He frees up Baldwin to do his freelancing thing, and both on offense and defense. Thompson is one of the more underrated players in the league because he refuses to take a jump shot. But he's maybe the best on-ball guard defender in the league. Great assist guy, team guy, 40-minute guy, and he unleashes Baldwin to be creative. And when he's not there, Baldwin's got to do it all.
Yeah, and Baldwin scored 17 points in that game, but outside of Tucker, who had 16, he didn't have a lot of help there. McDermott missed 8 threes in that game. So I think we could agree this is a game Xavier should win. And I don't see any reason why they can't win the last 3 also, Andy. And, I mean, beating Providence, I mean, those last 2 wins, Providence and Butler, those would be quad 1 net wins, right?
Yeah, everything left on the schedule. And Georgetown is going to be below 75 in the NET when they get there Sunday, no matter what happens in Marquette. So that's a quad win. And PC is definitely below 75. And that's a road game. And then Butler at home, they may be borderline depending on what they do. You got to be top 30. If you beat a team at your place, they got to be top 30 NET. So Butler's going to be, they've lost 3 in a row. They're leaking oil. Now, they have I think Depaul on Saturday at Hinkle, and then they play St. John's before they come to Xavier at Hinkle. So, if St. John's if those 2 guards are not a full go for Butler and St. John's puts that manic press on, that could be a problem. I don't care where you play them on a playground. I mean, St. John's it's a chaos theory. They'll turn them over a ton of times.
Yeah, remember they lost to Georgetown with Baldwin playing. So without either one of those guys, who knows what happens there. But all right, Andy, you want to tell people where they can follow you on the internet, on Twitter?
Yeah, let's see, _Andy Mack, _Andy Mack, and I got some stuff up today on the NET, on bracket matrix, on where Xavier stands, and what the truth is about the Georgetown situation. And Xavier's looking pretty good. They're in 125 of 126 track brackets and bracketology. So that means only one stupid idiot didn't put them in the
That's the bracket that's done by the University of Cincinnati graduates, right?
I think it's Borcats.com or something. Yeah. No. UC may make it. They need a win. I think they need to beat Houston on the road, and then they might be in good shape.
Yeah, that's not going to be an easy win for them either. Plus, I think their conference tournament is going to be tough. But if UC doesn't make it, that's all right, because the NIT is still important, isn't it, Andy? Wink, wink.
Yeah, they're really going to draw big crowds over there for an NIT game.
All right, guys.
I'll have other things to do that night.
All right, guys. You can follow me at Grueling Truth. You can hear all of our podcasts on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, YouTube, wherever you find podcasts. You'll find the Grueling Truth. So for now, for Andy MacWilliams, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.